Drill sergeants of Reddit. What was the funniest thing a recruit said? Context: in Army basic training, anything said to a drill sergeant needs to end with their title. Yes, drill sergeant. No, drill sergeant. So early into basic, our drill sergeant was handing out rifles. He asks my battle buddy for his serial number. Battle buddy rattles it off, so the drill sergeant, not having heard his title given, asks him, "Who the fuck do you think you're speaking to? A drill sergeant? An asshole? A dickhead?" My buddy, realizing he forgot the title, now fully flustered, goes to say apologies, drill sergeant, but instead says apologies, dickhead. Both their eyes got wide at the same time in totally different ways. The private realized he may not survive what comes next. The drill sergeant is giddy with excitement that a private just called him a dickhead to his face. Exercise ensued. Fort Sill, OK 2002. During my basic, DS is smoking ass on the first day, playing Who Doesn't Want to Be Here. If you don't want to be here, I don't want you here. Just tell me and you can go home. We've been in front lean and dressed for between 15 minutes, 2 years, give or take, when somebody raises their hand. DS was flustered for a second because I don't think anyone had ever actually been dumb enough to raise their hand. He goes and gets down in private's face and screaming at him. Finally he says, "Why don't you want to be here?" I'll never forget the response. "Drill sergeant, this is not what my recruiter led me to believe this would be like." Only time I saw the DS speechless. I ended up doing basic, OCS, an officer basic course with that guy. There was another Phil Ken Sebin in the platoon, and the DS asks my one day if I would mind if he called my white Phil Ken Sebin so he could tell us apart. I'm white. DS and other guy weren't. I think he wanted to see how I would react. That weekend we got our phone call and I asked my parents to address my next letter to white Phil Ken Sebin. Next mail call. DS, who was really cool as DS's go, is just rattling off names and gets to my letter. You could almost hear his brain record scratch. Worth the push-ups. When I was in basic training, there was someone going through their locker in the middle of the night making hella noise. So one of the trainees sat up in bed and screamed, "Shut the fuck up." The person going through the locker was a drill instructor doing a random check. The trainee who told him to shut the fuck up got tripped a new one, but the instructor was probably dying laughing on the inside. I don't know how they keep his straight face. Edit for everyone asking, this was Lackland 2018 lol. One guy got selected to go to the Natick Human Research Center after basic, which is basically a place where they use soldiers in experiments to test new gear. So he gets his pamphlet or whatever from the DS, and as he's walking away he says, "Well, I didn't want a robo-dick in my ass, but I guess I'm getting one," and the DS just lost it laughing. Had to close the door to his office. In Navy boot camp we have a thing before battle stations called Amnesty Night. This is where we confess all the dumb shit we managed to get away with to our RDCs and not get in trouble. Our chief had a lisp, which we all talked shit about throughout boot camp, but never in front of him. We had a pretty short guy named Patterson that could do a perfect impression of our chief. Patterson proceeded to stand up in the middle of forward dig and said, "Why the fuck do I have to keep touching your dirty ass cubist? You motherfuckers make me sick." The inter-division was dying. The RDCs were in tears about to fall out of their chairs. When everything quietened down, our chief looked at us and said, "I fucking hate you goiths." But that was fucking funny. The entire division proceeded to die again. Edit, I can't spell. We were on a casual run for PT, nice and easy, 3 kilometers, finished the run. Shed pump Private X walks up to the sergeant conducting the run and says, "Sergeant, when does the real run start?" Thought he was hilarious. Ended up running 12 kilometers that day. Fuck that guy. Recruit fired all his blank ammo during ambush response training. He crawled and ditched to opposite where the aggressors were, and started throwing rocks at them. DI came running in middle of the road blowing his whistle and screaming, "What the fuck are you doing?" Recruit screamed back, throwing hand grenades. Drill sergeant. Without missing a beat, the DI screamed out "fucking standing" and walked away. Asked a private the difference between cover and concealment, private said, "Drill sergeant, you asked what seems like a very important question which I am supposed to know the answer." However, this private was imagining not being called on, and was not paying attention to the question. Drill sergeant. In boot camp, there was a rumor of a recruit who was being punished by having to do tons and tons of mountain climbers, push-up position, alternate bringing knees to chest. Out of nowhere, the recruit stood up. The drill instructor asked what the hell he was doing. The recruit replied, "I reached the top of the mountain, sir. For me personally, I was on guard duty late one night." The drill instructor from the platoon below ours was friends with our drill instructor. As a new recruit, I saw him and started to report, and he started to mess with my uniform, saying "quiet, quiet." After a minute or two, my entire uniform was messed up, sleeves cuffed and uncuffed, shirt untucked, boots untied. He starts undoing my belt. As my pants hit the deck, my drill instructor comes out furious. He says, "Leatherwood, are you going to let this other drill instructor come on our deck and FCK with you like this?" Comment to which I replied, "Of course, if he wants to, sir." I was not trying to be smart or anything, but they both had to slink away to the office and I could hear them laughing pretty hard. Not a DS but doing my best to translate ranks etc. from Finnish military. I served as an instructor for new conscripts during the latter half of my own conscript service. We were testing how well the new conscripts had learned the ranks of our military. They would wait in line, and when it was their turn I'd show them a piece of paper with the symbol of a rank in it. They would address me properly, tell their name and say the rank. For example, Sir Corporal Sir, conscript last name, a captain. The rank depicted on the piece of paper I showed was corporal, which was also my rank, and thus, on my jacket, very visibly, the new conscript first addressed me Sir General Sir. I raised an eyebrow and he quickly tried to fix his mistake. Sir Second General Sir, a rank that would be right below General if it existed, which it does not. The conscript behind him made a chuckle, so he fixed his mistake again saying Sir Corporal Sir, conscript last name. I don't remember the rank you are showing. I said, "You just said it." He went quiet and thought for a few seconds, then happily said, "A conscript." My dad tells me this story all the time. Back in the 80s when he was doing basic training, the DS was going down the line asking why everyone joined, and my dad was like, "Oh shit, I don't have a good answer for this," and was nervous. DS goes to the guy next to my dad, asks the question, and the guy says, "To defend my country, sir." DS goes, "That's bullshit, you're here for the money and the education," and that became everyone's answer. I feel bad for the guy, but I gotta say it, his last name was Smelly, as in, smelly. So when I had him come into the class for the orientation, admin day, the very first day, I asked everyone to stand up and give their rank, name, serial number. So when I heard Private Smelly, I lost it. I felt so bad for the guy. Edit, I don't know what fully came of Smelly, but this was back in 2007 and I had heard he didn't make it through BMQ, and VR'd, voluntary release. This was in the Canadian Forces. In basic training, stood by our bags, inspection of platoon commander, in she comes, walks around, asks everyone questions. Guy next to me, who I'm still mates with now, got asked what he did before he joined. He answered, proud as luncheon for everyone to hear, "I sold condoms and nuts, ma'am." Her and the corporals just started laughing, couldn't help it. Marching the troops back to the barracks after lunch, I noticed a recruit with a white stain on his hip pocket. I halted the platoon and got in the recruit's face. "Me, Recruit, that white stain on your shirt better be because you are excited for this afternoon's training. Recruit, no sergeant, I am saving my snack for later. Me, what snack are you saving? Recruit, ice cream. Not a DS, but a Navy recruit. I was on colors duty and it's kind of windy in Chicago. One time, we did not tie the fastening ropes well enough, so the flag ended up half-mast. Our RDC retrieves me and the other recruit from class an hour later and proceeds to yell at us and asks, "Who the fuck died?" The other recruit, without missing a beat, says, "Chris Farley." Which was technically true cause he died a few days before. The RDC had to leave to compose himself, before proceeding to have us stand at attention for a few hours while all the other ship RDCs came by and made fun, yelled at us, making Farley and SNL jokes. Obligatory, not a drill sergeant, but I was U.S. infantry, serving in Korea. We were part of a mixed U.S./Korea unit, and during a briefing, one of the Korean soldiers fell asleep. Our sergeant wakes him up and begins screaming at him. The soldier said, "No, sergeant, you got it all wrong. In Korea, it's a sign of respect to listen with your eyes closed, because then you have no other distractions." The sergeant bought it, and as soon as the meeting was over and the sergeant was out of earshot, we all cracked up. Standing in formation at Fort Knox about to head to the range and everyone needs their gloves. One private comes out without them and the DS screams, "Private, where the fuck are your gloves?" In this thick Tennessee accent he goes, "Well, damn drill sergeant, I must have done left them some bitches upstairs." The DS, from New Jersey, just dies laughing. I had a friend tell me this story. In the Marines it shit is similar to a demerit. A Marine had something wrong with his uniform and was going to receive a chit. The drill sergeant gets in his face and yells, "Private, what is a four-letter word that starts with C and ends with T?" The private thinks for a moment and sounds off, "Back, cancer." To which the drill sergeant replies, holding back laughter, "No, private, to chit." At basic I got the whole DS team laughing from a comment. DS starts yelling at me in my face about God knows what, on and on. He is from the deep south and has a super strong Mississippi accent. I am an immigrant from South Africa. My accent sounds English or Australian to US people, only been in the USA for a few years and have been living in Oregon, and honestly I can only understand a bit of what he is saying. At the end he concludes with, "Do you understand the words coming out of my mouth, private?" I reply, "Drill sergeant, number. I am really struggling with your accent, drill sergeant." There was silence for a bit, then they all started laughing. Required to have creases in your uniform, and if you know anything about it you can sometimes fuck it up and give a shirt 2 creases, commonly referred to as railroad tracks. On morning information for uniform inspection it was discovered someone had done this to their shirt, so in come the DIs. At one point one of them yelling asked recruit Tex, "Are you a train conductor?" And sure as shit, he was before he joined. So he answered, "Sir, yes sir." Everyone got awkward quiet for what felt like 5 minutes, but I'm sure it was only 5 seconds, and then the group of them went on yelling at the next person in formation. Obligatory, not a DS. We were on the grenade training range in groups of 3. This is where there are various stations where you and your group have to throw dummy grenades at things. When you're the one throwing, you are supposed to yell to your group, "Cover me while I throw my grenade." This one guy from the south with an accent to match yelled, "Cover me while I throw this here grenade." Before he lobbed it, I had never seen the DS monitoring that station laugh so hard. Not a DS. We had a specific response that we had to say if RT or any other asked us a question in basic, they would say something, or if you had to go over to them, you had to say trainee, last name, reports as ordered when you got there or before you could answer. A lot of trainees screwed it up and would say reporting instead of reports. One day some new kid in another flight, still in his civilian clothing, said he was reporting to his T, and when he got there our T stopped our flight so we could watch what happened. That guy stood there reporting the weather and telling the T what shapes he saw in the clouds because only fucking meteorologists do the reporting. I'll never forget watching some guy sit there and tell 52 other people what shapes he saw in the clouds at the top of his lungs. Went to boot camp, Marines, in 2005. There was no room for bullshit back then, and I assume that is still the case. Well, about halfway through boot camp one night we finish everything and are in our racks to sleep. The moment the drill instructor flips the light switch off, one of the recruits yells across the squad bay, "Good night, sir." So simple, so stupid, yet so absolutely hilarious. We spent the next 30 minutes getting idled in the dark. I still look back at the moment and laugh sometimes. During inspection, the section leader would walk up to every recruit and look them over for issues with their uniform. Everyone had a cap badge on their beret and it's supposed to be over the left eyebrow. Unfortunately for me, when I put my beret on, the cap badge was directly in the middle of my head. Sergeant walks up to me, stares me in the eye and says, "Private X, are you the mythical Cyclops of the underworld?" Quite a few push-ups later and a lot of humiliation, I finally figured out what was wrong. Never made that mistake again. In boot camp you never touch a drill instructor's cover. Well, this one day we were in the squad bay real chill, so the DIs took their covers off. Well, one sat theirs on a footlocker while we were in a school circle around the senior. The senior got done and told us we were on free time and told all the DIs to go in the hut with her. Well, we turned to our footlockers and noticed the one left her cover. In a 3-recruit operation we decided to return it to her. 2 recruits picked up their footlocker with the cover and walked over to the hut door. A third, very nervously, ran up to the door and knocked. The DI whipped open the door and screamed, "Wait, recruit? Ma'am, these recruits were just trying to return drill instructor Staff Sergeant Smicatella's cover." She looked down and realized what they had done and snatched it so fast. She quickly covered her mouth and slammed the door. Laughter ensued in the whole bay. The door opened and all we heard was "Shut up, fools," which only made us laugh louder. I went through OCS a couple of years back. Our RDC was a stickler for making sure that our socks were pulled all the way up during PT and would routinely yell at candidates to pull their socks up by yelling, "Motivate your socks." A couple days into OCS and we're doing PT and the RDC spots a girl with her socks bunched at her ankles. He rushes over and gets in her face and requests that she motivate her socks. She, being new, has no idea what this means yet. He yells it again and she started to panic. She looks down at her socks and yells at the top of her lungs, "You can do IT socks." RDC does an about-face and despite his best attempt he absolutely loses it while trying to make a hasty exit. Not a drill instructor, but this happened during the Beast Week of USAF-BMT. My flight was striking the soft mannequins with the stock of our M4 and as we did our T kept yelling, "Let me hear your war cry." A fellow trainee had joked he was going to yell "No means no." As it came to my turn and I laid one into the mannequin, I forgot to yell out. The T yelled at me to strike again and to hear my war cry. In a panic I yelled "No means no" as that was the first thing that came to my head. Totally shattered the T's bearing and we all had a good laugh. Not a DI. We were marching, standing in formation for a few hours doing parade practice over and over so the people running it could get the entire ceremony down pat. A military parade ceremony, not a walk down the boulevard parade. For us in formation, it just sucked. At one point we'd been standing at attention for a prolonged period when I noticed the fellow in front and to the left of me was standing in a puddle. It hadn't trained. The guy had just relieved himself while standing at attention. Once the DI noticed, he caught all kinds of hell for being an idiot and not falling out of formation to go to the latrine. I felt sorry for him and myself, would have given him an award for outstanding military bearing. He didn't flinch or anything. Obligatory not a DS. We had a newcomer to the unit, fresh out of training, and his squad leader was a very boisterous black staff sergeant. He decided to mess with the kid, very loudly asking him where he was from. The kid said he was from Wisconsin. The staff sergeant yells, "Wisconsin? ? I bet I'm the first black man you ever seen." Kid says, "No, Sergeant, we have a black family in the county."